Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. My name is Gary, and I hope you're all having a fantastic day or evening wherever you are. In today's story, OP found out his wife cheated on him after OP was outside in their driveway and saw his wife kissing his friend while they were in the house alone. Now, 2 years later, karma happened and his wife is miserable. Let's get into today's story. My situation happened about 2 years ago, and I can still remember it like yesterday. I believe that me and my ex could be a shining example of a great couple, but we were anything but that in the end. My story is a very serious one because of loyalty. I'd been noticing a real lack of loyalty in relationships for a while now. Even though I was super loyal to my wife, she still cheated on me. Me, 32, and my wife, 31, were married for 6 years, and we were happy. As far as I could tell, we never had any real problems. Money wasn't even an issue, even though we weren't rich. We were able to pay bills and go anywhere and do what we wanted as long as we planned for it. She worked in an office at a child clinic, and I worked in fabrication since I always worked with my hands. My wife was fun, outgoing, and always was my ride or die. She always made me stop and appreciate life more instead of working all the time. We would go and travel every year, especially since my idea of a vacation was to sit in the backyard with a drink in my hand. Thanks to her, we visited Vegas, Cancun, and visited her cousin in San Juan. This was good because I haven't lived there since I was 11 or 12 years old. It was great to have a wife who added something to my life, even though I definitely would have married her because of her looks. Her face looked just like Una Chaplin, but she had the body of the weather girl, Terry Inoa. We got along with each other's family, so we were all good as family, especially since she was the only child. Hanging out at clubs and stuff was fun, but we got to the point after a while where we enjoyed each other's company more. But apparently I had the situation all messed up because my wife cheated on me and got suspicious during a little get-together we always have at our house. Even though there was COVID, me and my ex invited our friends to hang out with us on the weekend. We would play music, drink, and play card games on Saturdays. Since the clubs weren't open and there were no concerts, our close friends hung out at our place. It had become a regular thing, especially since we had all the alcohol. This night, though, after playing spades, one of my friends challenged another friend of mine to play me in a game of Texas Hold'em. This friend, let's just call this guy Rome, was super anxious to play me. This guy was working at the same job as my other friend, and that's how we got to know each other. Rome was the type that was flashy and braggadocious, and we all would have to bring his mind out of the clouds sometimes. And the game of Texas Hold'em would do this because he never beat me one-on-one before. At the time, we recently learned how to play it thanks to his uncle. Even though we weren't that good, I always would beat him, and for some reason, it aided him. He lost to me 7 times straight, and the last time he was talking shit, a little too personal. He'd talk about having a better car than me, a better house than me, but he would act bitter about my winning streak. At first, I didn't want to play, but thanks to the hecklers, Rome insisted that we play. Sure enough, when we played, I ended up beating him twice. Pissed off, he wanted to play again, but I said that my ex and her friends wanted to play dominoes and had said we should stop. My ex jumped in and agreed, but he wanted to play one more game. He offered to put up $100 to play again, and when I still said no, he upped it to $150. After this, my friends started heckling me, saying it was easy money. I don't gamble because I know my luck, but I decided to play for the money, even though we don't put up any real money. It turns out he actually beat me, and I ended up losing $150. He jumped out of his seat and got in the face of our friend who was heckling him to gloat. They got into a heated argument, and we had to break them up for a while. After a handshake, Rome told me he really didn't want my money and declined when I said I was still going to pay him. When my ex came in from the kitchen, Rome told her he won, and she seemed surprised and happy for him. After giving him a hug, she told us it was time for her and her friends to play dominoes. The rest of the night, we didn't have any more problems. The only thing we had to deal with was him still gloating. When everybody was leaving, I was talking to my best friend, Rich, in our driveway. Standing there with him, I was able to see through the window of our house and see Rome talking to my ex. At first, I didn't think that anything was wrong and thought he was still gloating. But then I saw him pull her by her waist to him and put his forehead to hers. After a second, she walked back into our living room and he followed her out. This bothered me so much that Rich asked me what was wrong, since his back was kind of turned to it and he missed what I saw. I said nothing and I told him to get home safe. After everybody left, my mind couldn't get off what I saw. While cleaning up, I tried to rationalize it by saying they're friends too, and that she was just happy for him that he won. But knowing how Rome was with women, that excuse I had only lasted a day. The next day, what I saw ate at my mind. I've never been the jealous type of guy, but it did make me nervous, and I had to get doubt out of my mind. That night, after we went to bed, I stayed up until 2 in the morning when I knew she was asleep. Sliding out of the bed, I took her phone and took my phone too. Taking our phones to the living room, I called my brother Juan. My ex had a lock on her phone, and I knew the only one who could get me in it was Juan. I called him about 7 times, and he finally picked up. Sounding really annoyed, he asked me what I wanted. I told him to do me a favor and call her phone for me. He asked me why, and I told him I would tell him later. And after hanging up, he found her number and called it. After answering it real quick, I went in her text, and it totally broke me. There were a bunch of texts about him screwing her for about a year, and it was even worse than that. This guy was sending her videos of him stroking his private parts, and she once sent him back a pic with her mouth open and her tongue out. There were at least 7 or 8 pictures of him exposing himself, and I had to scroll away. I was so mad that I almost threw her phone across the room. My world was officially turned upside down, and though I was really going through it, I knew what I had to do. After getting some screenshots, I sent them to my phone, and I put her phone back on the charger. I decided to sleep on the couch because I definitely wasn't sleeping with her. I was already planning how I wanted to get the hell out of this betrayed spouse marriage. The next morning, when we were getting ready for work, my ex asked me why I didn't come back to bed. After I said I didn't want to, she thought I was just being a smartass and playfully slapped me upside the head. If it wasn't so early, my ex probably would have gotten sassy with me, but just went to make her coffee to start the day. I never really went to work. I started looking for a good lawyer all day. After finding one, he was expensive, but he told me the best way to get the job done. When I filed, I had to wait till she got served, and that was the hard part. Seeing her in the house, she would try to hold a conversation with me, but I failed miserably. All that I could give her was yes, no, and maybe. Talking to her was hard to do after reading those texts. Know that she went to his place after work, and if I'm hanging out with Juan, she'd invite him to our place. At first, she would tell him it was the last time. Then she would openly invite him over and text him until he did. This was an every week thing. I feel like I was lucky I had caught her. At least now I know why she always turned me down in bed and had to promise me sex. I just couldn't wait till she got served at her job. I was ready to explode on her. And I was ready to explode on Rome, too. As messed up in the head as I was ready to move on. On the day she got served, I decided to take that day off as well. My ex called me and screamed at me that she couldn't believe I just served her with divorce papers. Apparently, she got served during her lunch break like I had asked, and her friends at work saw this. They had to be the ones to tell her that they were divorce papers. I told her I was divorcing her and I needed her to look at it before she came back home. My ex hung up and I knew she was on her way back. I probably should have had a friend with me at the time, but I wasn't thinking perfectly about the situation. When she pulled up, I sent her the screenshots of her texts with Rome. The second she bust in, she was crying and screaming at me. She said she knew I was acting funny and asked how I could all of a sudden divorce her. I said she must not have gotten my text and said, check your phone. She said she wanted me to tell her, but I said, just check your phone. She looked in her phone, and when she saw her own texts with Rome, she dropped the phone and put her face in her hands. She sat down on the couch, and it was my turn to start screaming at her. I called her a hoe in so many different ways, and asked her how she could do this with my friend. She had this look of disbelief in her eyes and was just saying sorry without even looking at me. I got my keys and just left to go to Juan's house. After breaking all the news to Juan, I called my family and friends. I then told her mother, and she relayed the message to her father, who was in Florida helping a friend with his business. After sending the screenshots to Rome and telling him I was going to kick his ass if I saw him, he texted back, "I'm sorry, bro." After this, I had a meet-up with my friends and told all of them that if they wanted to still be friends with Rome, that's cool. But I let them know that's not how I operate, and I wouldn't still hang with him if it happened to them. They agreed with me and said to call if I needed them. My ex called me and said that she wanted to talk. She asked me if there was any way for us to reconcile. I told her not only did she cheat on me, but I saw that she was talking shit about me. She told him I wouldn't find out because I was wrapped around her finger, and agreed with every bad thing that Rome was saying about me. She said that she was sorry and that while we were all together at our house, he started flirting with her and always complimented her body. After he was getting in cool with her friends, they would hang out with Rome, but she wouldn't tell me. So whenever she would go to a Drake or a Bad Bunny concert with her friends, Rome was with them. I asked her why she didn't say anything. She said because she didn't want it to look weird. After that, he started flirting with her through texts, and she started flirting back. Then, one of the few days I was passed out drunk, they started kissing, and it led to them touching each other. She said one day he popped up at our house when I was out. After claiming he just wanted to talk, he had started touching her and charming her again, and then he screwed her. I told her I know that she doesn't love me, and that's why there won't be any kind of reconciliation. After cursing her out again, I said, "Don't talk to me, talk to my lawyer," and hung up. I was glad we didn't have a family yet. The divorce was terrible, though, mostly because of COVID. She ended up getting our house, but she wasn't going to be able to keep it without my income. She had decided to sell it and moved in with her friend Dina. Rome was cut off from my other friends because he was definitely not trustworthy. I was happy about this because with both of them out of my life, I felt free, especially in my new home I was renting. For 2 years, I haven't heard from either of them. I ran into a friend of hers at a restaurant, and she seemed happy to see me when she was coming in. She spilled the tea about my ex and said she moved out of Dina's apartment and got her own place recently. She said she missed me because she's on Tinder and it frustrates her. We both just laughed, and I told her to enjoy her dinner because me and my brother were leaving. I recently broke down and checked her profile on Facebook, but turned my head instantly and promised myself not to look at her Facebook page again. My ex's friend made me want to post this to say to you guys to be careful. Loyalty is important in relationships and to always know who's around you. My wife didn't love me, but she was just too selfish. Plus, she is a gorgeous woman, so she was placed on a pedestal by me and honestly didn't deserve it. But knowing all this, she took advantage of my love for her. All this honestly got me back in my feelings, but I want to tell you guys, you can definitely make it over this. This was a hard thing to go back through, but I hope you don't lose sight of your happiness. Right now, I need a glass of Hennessy. I appreciate this community, make money, and live long. OP, I'm glad you were able to overcome your situation. I can imagine how painful it was for you to find out your wife was cheating the way that you did. At the end of your story, you mentioned that you accidentally peeked on your wife's Facebook page to check on how she's doing. Remember that in order to fully get over what happened to you, you should completely abstain from keeping up with how your wife is doing. Truth of the matter is your marriage is over because she was not who she claimed she was. As far as I'm concerned, she should be history to you and the last thing on your mind. Continue to focus on yourself and heal from this situation. I believe you can do it, OP. I'm sure your wife has already realized how badly she has messed up, and she is trying to fill that void by using Tinder. But trust me, it will not work. Best of luck to you, OP, and I hope you're able to soon find peace from the pain your wife has caused you. Thanks for taking your time to listen to today's story. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's story. Take care, everyone.